And it wasn't until like I did a road trip down to Sydney that same year. Am I hitting that? Am I? Road trip that same year, and again, like, thought everything was all good, put this facade on, this mask on. Everyone was like, Elliot's, yeah, one of the boys having a good time, but really I was just like dead inside. And I remember like having like a proper like 3-4 day bender down to Sydney and then coming back to Brisbane and couldn't sleep. Like I just fried my nervous system. Like I could not sleep. My body was like jolting me awake. And I checked myself into hospital. And I was like maybe midnight, 1 a.m, checked myself into hospital, got no money. I broke, like spending all my money on drugs and alcohol. I checked myself into hospital, told the nurse, like, I've just had a big week, down to Sydney for New Year's, and what's in your system? Told them what's in my system. And they were like looking at me because it's, 1 a.m. They're like, this kid, like I've had 3-4 days of no sleep. So I would have looked and smelt terrible. Had to call my mum and dad to pay for the visit because I had no money. So they're like, why are you in hospital at 1 a.m? I had to lie to them. But I remember laying in like the hospital bed and they were giving me like IV and bottles of, they gave me like a carton of bottled water because they're like, you were severely dehydrated. And I remember like calling mum and dad, and it was a feeling like they knew what was happening. They knew that I knew that they knew, but we never said it. But their tone and their voice was like, we need to talk about it, but we never did at that period in time. But I remember like their tone and their voice asking me if I'm okay, and I was like, yeah, I'm okay. And there was like a pause because I knew that they knew that I wasn't okay. And then I was like, I'll call you in the morning. Like everything will be good. And I remember like the chaplain coming from the hospital, and he was like doing the rounds, and he was like, sat down with me, and he's just like, everything all good at home? And I'm like, yeah, everything's all good. He's like, everything good with you? And I was like, yeah, everything's all good. And I was so good at like brushing, like just lying to people. And he just looked dead and straight in my eyes, and he was like, is everything all good? And I couldn't look people in the eye. I was always sort of looking around and stuff like that. And he looked me in the eye, and he fucking knew straight away, like everything was not so good. Like everything was not okay. He's just like, like we can talk about it. And I kept like, I was so young and immature, and I was just like, no, everything's sweet. Like I just had a big weekend. Like leave me alone. Like get out of my face. But I remember like, I'll never forget like the look in his eyes, because he was like, he could see straight through the bullshit. I think that was like that period in time, like me laying there, I think that was my rock bottom, because I remember like people go to rehab, people go to therapists and that sort of thing to get over certain like addictions or, suicide attempts and that sort of thing. And I remember laying there, getting off the phone with mum and dad and thinking like, they came over from New Zealand at like when they were 18 and 19, 20 years old, no money, like absolutely no money. And they raised 3 boys, worked full time for like the same job for like 30 years. And I remember laying there just thinking, they've done so much for me. They've gone to all my footy trainings. They've been so present in my life. I've always felt safe and loved at home. And how was I going to repay them? This is what I was going to do. I was going to party and take all these drugs and end my life, because I was too afraid to figure out who I am. I was too afraid to like dig deeper. Really, that's how I was going to repay them. And I felt terrible. And like, the road that I was going down, they were going to have to bury their son one day. That was the outcome. So I remember laying there, and it was like a switch flicked in my head. Like instantly, like the next day, I was like, nah. Like there was so much shame and guilt and embarrassment. I was just like, nah, I'm not doing it to mum and dad. Like that is stupid. That is ridiculous. Like I'm going to change everything that's going on. And that was definitely my rock bottom. And that was the very start of my journey in terms of like getting to know who I am,